must say you're here sooner than expected.
Are you expecting some sort of negative review even after my last Baldur's Gate 3 video? No? Good. Now go play the game. It's well worth the time and money.
We're doing this the hard way, then.
I'll give you a brief review, but then I have to do some merc work on Rubicon, and then get back to a Dark Urge run where I try to make as many friends as possible. Baldur's Gate 3 is an excellent experience from start to finish, providing layers of intrigue, engagement, and satisfaction over a 3-act, multi-branched, web-like, beautiful mess of a story made up of the various choices and encounters the player experiences. But that doesn't mean it's without flaw, so let's take a look at some of the game's good and bad points as objectively as we can for a game which has so much love from its developers and players alike. You start the game with character creation, which introduces the player to the D&D 5th edition rule set that the game is based on, by providing 11 races, 28 sub-races, 12 classes, 46 subclasses, and a whole lot of variety when it comes to potential builds and playstyle. Creating your character is actually really well done, and all the information a new player would need for it is easily found on the screen. But it's with the character's appearance that things get disappointing, because options are far more limited, which often leads to some very samey character appearances, unless you decide you want to have a skin condition. And I never could understand the game's obsession with having the majority of the appearance options be really unappealing, and some of them, quite frankly, being ugly.
Ugly motherfucker.
Alongside custom characters, the game also has 7 origin characters you can either choose to play as, or have join your adventuring party. The Dark Urge origin especially feels like it was intentionally created to be the alternative to the default main custom character, and provides some distinctly unique encounters and items along the way. After character creation, we're introduced to the game's main story with a tutorial level to explore and enemies to defeat. The devs did a really good job with this tutorial and the subsequent first hour of gameplay on the coast, by giving the player plenty of opportunities to learn and understand how the game works in and out of combat. Combat is turn-based and deliberate, but unlike how it sounds, that doesn't make its pacing feel slow, and Larian's modifications to the rules to better fit a video game experience might possibly be the superior form of the 5th edition rule set, and more importantly, that's because classes, spells, and abilities are more impactful. Combat is more extravagant, challenging, and fun.
In my not so humble opinion,
Does a better job providing the power fantasy than the current iteration of tabletop Dungeons and Dragons. But even this has its flaws. The combat log is lacking in a lot of detail, and at times it could be difficult to parse exactly what happened. The pale white rings and markers for spell effect areas can be a bit difficult to see, which can make targeting difficult, and occasionally, objects thrown will hit and break against invisible objects in the area, even when the UI marker shows that there are no obstructions in the way.
Don't even get me started.
About the sluggish camera movement and controls. All the way it can get caught on taller elements of the environment, or how zooming it out doesn't go very far, even in tactical mode. Exploration is further marred by how few things are highlighted by the Alt key tooltips, making it all but useless, which is a problem I also found in Divinity Original Sin 2. Despite all that, Scratch is the goodest boy, and most of those mechanical issues can and have been fixed by the wondrous modding community, who've been working with the game during the last few years of early access, and who will soon have access to the official modding tools that Larian are going to release. I found the writing to be fairly good for the most part, if a bit corny on occasion, though plot points and encounters can feel a bit forced and heavy-handed, like the time me and my party were walking through the country only to find a mansion on fire, and somehow got embroiled in a duke's kidnapping. Straight after that, we find out that Will is the son of the same duke, as well as the fantasy Super Zorro and the Faustian bargain character archetype he represents. It's not his status or connection to the duke that's bad here, just the way the story elements are pushed together and presented to the player that feels heavy-handed. On the other hand, choices of all kinds feel impactful and have consequences both good and bad. And these branching choices give very different and satisfying experiences for each individual playthrough. However, content like quests, narrative elements, and other types of encounters can be really easy to miss, either due to choices made or by not thoroughly exploring environments or conversation. This is good because it shows how much stuff there is to do.
That's a lot of fish.
And how much each and every choice the player makes matters to their progression. The character interactions are fun, and the origin characters are multidimensional, with each having highly compelling stories and backgrounds in their own right, and the voice acting for them is absolutely superb, but the dialogue can be far too immersion-breaking at times. For example, Astarion can sometimes come across as a 2023 Twitter twink, instead of the dark and traumatized ex-slave vampire with a thirst for power and unhindered independence. Or Karlach, who sounds like she was written for people who like Game of Thrones because the character swore and were easy to get in the sack with. Speaking of getting in the sack, it's almost too easy to have sex with other characters, and sometimes the majority of dialogue options in a given conversation can lead to it, which not only seems excessive and unnecessary, but also like the devs were super thirsty and really need to get laid. I'm not a prude, mind you, so I'm not saying sex scenes should be removed, just that it, 1, take more effort to accomplish, and 2, not be the first and majority of the conversation options with any given NPC. I'm looking at you, Halsin.
You dirty, dirty bastard.
And there also seemed to be a pattern of having the player voluntarily go through oddly fetishistic, highly questionable traumatic events to gain permanent power, which could have been a really interesting point on the cost of power and the price a given being would pay for it. But none of those events really turn out that way, so this was another one of those things I chalked up to sex-starved devs.
Hey Bill, what time is it?
It's time to get laid.
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 Baldur's Gate 3 is a fun and enthralling experience, which I would recommend anyone to play. And unlike other companies, Larian have done right by us customers and fans with a game like this. So go buy it, play it, have fun, and as always, my people, take care of yourselves.
Laid 'cause your mom and dad paid for the tux.
And they spent a lot of bucks on a limo. It's time to have fun.
It's time to have fun.
Like a son of a gun.
Like a son of a gun. So take your prom date and run to the hotel.
Like a bat out of hell. And be sure to have a pocket full of rubbers.